In episode 34, titled Scripting Concepts for Recon, Bash/Python/PowerShell, we're going to treat scripting as what it really is in a recon context: automation that makes information gathering repeatable, consistent, and defensible. Pen Test Plus questions sometimes reference scripts indirectly, not to test your syntax, but to test whether you understand why automation exists and how to use it responsibly. A good script reduces human error, enforces the same steps every time, and produces outputs that can be compared and reported cleanly. It also helps you work under time constraints by letting a computer do the repetitive parts while you focus on interpretation and decision-making. The danger is that poorly designed automation can create noise, cause unintended side effects, or mishandle sensitive data, which is exactly the kind of professional failure the exam wants you to avoid. The goal here is to understand scripting concepts that apply across Bash, Python, and PowerShell without turning this into a coding lesson. By the end, you should be able to explain what recon automation should do, how it should behave, and what pitfalls to avoid. Common scripting goals in recon tend to fall into three buckets: collect data, parse output, and enrich results so they can be acted on. Collecting data is about running the same basic checks across a set of targets and capturing the results in a consistent way, because recon is often about coverage and repeatability. Parsing output is about turning raw text into structured information you can sort, filter, and reason about, because humans are not good at scanning thousands of lines reliably. Enriching results is about adding context, such as timestamps, target metadata, or simple classifications, so the output becomes more useful for prioritization and reporting. The exam is not asking you to write code, but it expects you to understand that automation is most valuable when it produces comparable, structured results. A script that collects data but cannot be interpreted easily is only half useful, and a script that enriches results without reliable collection is built on sand. The professional pattern is collect first, parse second, enrich third, then use the output to choose the next step. When you understand these goals, you can answer questions about automation choices more confidently. Loops are one of the simplest concepts you can describe in plain language, and they are the reason scripts scale beyond one target. A loop simply repeats the same action across a list, such as a list of hosts, a list of domains, or a list of endpoints, and it does that repetition reliably without fatigue. In recon, this matters because you often need to run the same checks across many items, and doing that manually invites inconsistency and mistakes. The exam may describe a scenario where you need to gather information from many systems, and the best choice is often the one that uses automation to apply the same action repeatedly and record results consistently. Loops also support coverage because you can ensure every item in scope receives the same initial treatment before you decide what deserves deeper enumeration. A disciplined loop also includes pacing and safety considerations because repeating a check too aggressively can create noise or load. When you think of loops as repeat reliably across a list, you can reason about automation without needing to see a single line of code.
Conditionals are the decision points inside automation, and they are what make a script resilient rather than fragile. A conditional is the logic that says, if this happened, do that, which is essential because recon encounters errors, timeouts, and ambiguous results constantly. In practice, you use conditionals to handle failures gracefully, to distinguish between different result categories, and to decide what the script should do next based on observed evidence. The exam often tests this mindset by describing partial results and asking what you should do, and robust automation reflects that you do not treat every response the same.
Conditionals also protect safety
because a script that continues blindly in the face of unexpected behavior can create risk and noise. A good script can stop, slow down, or record a warning when it encounters conditions that should trigger caution. When you understand conditionals as branch based on outcomes, you understand why professional scripts are designed to adapt rather than assume.
Parsing is the concept that turns raw output into structured information, and it is often the difference between automation that produces value and automation that produces clutter. Parsing can be thought of as splitting text, extracting fields, and normalizing formats so results can be compared reliably. Splitting text is the basic act of breaking a long output into meaningful parts, such as separating targets from results or separating status indicators from details. Extracting fields means pulling out the specific pieces you care about, like a response state, a discovered identifier, or a service hint, instead of carrying all the noise forward. Normalizing formats means ensuring that values are represented consistently, such as using consistent host formatting or consistent timestamps, so you can sort and filter without confusion. Pen Test Plus questions sometimes hint at parsing by describing a script that collects output and summarizes results. And the test is whether you understand that summarization requires structured extraction. Good parsing also supports defensibility because it reduces subjective interpretation of raw text. When parsing is clean, your Recon outputs become decision-ready. Handling files and streams conceptually means reading, writing, and transforming data safely, which matters because Recon often involves moving information between steps. Reading means ingesting a target list or prior results. Writing means producing a consistent output artifact. And transforming means changing raw data into a cleaner format without losing meaning. The exam expects you to understand that file handling must be safe and controlled because Recon data can be sensitive even when it is not a secret. Safe handling includes avoiding accidental overwrites, ensuring outputs are clearly labeled, and preserving original data when transformations occur. Streams are a conceptual idea that data can flow from one step to another without being stored in an unstable way. But the key for the exam is that your process should be predictable and traceable. A professional script produces outputs that can be reviewed later and compared over time, which supports both reporting and quality control. When you think of files and streams as move data through a pipeline safely, you capture the concept without needing implementation details.
Idempotence is a concept that matters more than people expect, and in Recon automation, it means you can rerun a script without causing unintended side effects. Recon scripts should ideally observe and record rather than change systems, and idempotence reinforces that by making reruns safe and consistent. If you rerun a script and it produces wildly different output because it overwrote files or because it created noise that changed system behavior, you lose trust in the evidence. Idempotence also helps under time pressure because you can rerun checks to confirm ambiguous results without worrying that the script will break something or corrupt your data. The exam often tests this concept indirectly by emphasizing repeatability and defensibility, even if it never uses the word idempotence. In a professional mindset, idempotence is a promise. This automation can be executed again safely to confirm findings. When your automation supports safe reruns, it supports stronger decision-making.
There are common scripting pitfalls that Pen Test Plus expects you to recognize because they create real risk in engagements. Hard-coded secrets are one of the worst because embedding credentials or keys in scripts creates long-lived exposure and often violates evidence handling and security expectations. Noisy output is another pitfall because scripts that generate uncontrolled logs or unstructured output make analysis harder and can increase operational attention unnecessarily. Fragile assumptions are a third pitfall. such as assuming every target responds the same way, assuming a fixed output format, or assuming network conditions are stable, because those assumptions break in real environments. Another pitfall is failing to handle errors, leading to misleading results that look like success or that silently omit failures, which undermines reporting credibility. The exam often presents an automation scenario and asks what best practice applies, and avoiding these pitfalls is usually the right direction. A professional script is cautious, predictable, and safe by design, not just functional. When you can name these pitfalls, you can choose safer automation choices in questions. Now imagine a narrative example where you automate host list checks and summarize results, because this illustrates how the concepts work together. You start with a list of authorized targets and run a consistent reachability check across each one, using a loop so every target is handled the same way. For each target, you use conditionals to categorize the outcome, such as reachable, unreachable, or ambiguous, and you record the category and a timestamp. You parse the raw outputs into a clean, structured form, extracting only the fields that matter for prioritization and reporting. You write the results to a file in a consistent format and include summary counts so you can quickly see how many targets fell into each category. You then enrich the results by adding notes about which targets show high signal clues, such as strong service response indicators, while keeping the script actions observational rather than disruptive. When you rerun the script later, idempotent behavior ensures you can compare results with accidental overwrites or side effects. This narrative describes the why behind automation without requiring a single command, which is exactly the level the exam typically targets.
Quick wins in Recon automation come from starting small, logging actions, validating inputs, and handling failures, because these habits make scripts useful and safe quickly. Starting small means automating one reliable check before trying to build a complex framework, which reduces error and increases confidence in the output. Logging actions means recording what the script did, when it did it, and what it observed, which supports traceability and later reporting. Validating inputs means confirming that your target list is in the expected format and within scope, which prevents accidental scanning of unintended systems. Handling failures means capturing timeouts and errors explicitly rather than silently ignoring them, which prevents misleading coverage claims. The exam rewards these habits because they reflect professional engineering thinking rather than quick and dirty hacking. A script that fails loudly and records clearly is more trustworthy than a script that works but hides errors. When you build these quick wins into your automation mindset, you can answer script-related questions with confidence.
Safe handling of credentials is a critical concept because automation often tempts people to embed secrets for convenience, and the exam expects you to resist that temptation. Avoid embedding secrets in scripts because it creates persistent exposure, makes sharing scripts dangerous, and often violates organizational policy. The professional approach is to separate secrets from code and to limit who can access them, while still enabling automation to function within authorized boundaries. Even when you are given credentials by a client, your handling should be minimum necessary, controlled, and consistent with rules of engagement and data handling requirements. In exam reasoning, the safest answer often includes avoiding hard-coded secrets, restricting access, and documenting how credentials are used without exposing them. This is part of broader ethical and legal discipline. Credentials are powerful artifacts and should be treated like toxic material. When you keep secrets out of scripts, you reduce risk and increase defensibility. Automation also supports documentation because it produces consistent outputs and timestamps, which makes results easier to compare and easier to report. Consistency means the same fields are captured in the same format every time, which reduces confusion and prevents manual transcription errors. Timestamps matter because Recon results can change, and reports need to reflect when observations were made, especially in dynamic environments. Automated outputs also help with quality control because they can be reviewed, repeated, and validated, supporting defensible conclusions. On Pen Test Plus, reporting and documentation discipline is a recurring theme, and automation that supports that discipline reflects professional maturity. A well-designed script can become part of your evidence trail, showing what was observed and when, without requiring manual note-taking under pressure. When automation is paired with clear documentation, your workflow becomes both faster and more credible. A simple memory phrase can keep scripting concepts organized, and a useful one is collect, parse, decide, summarize, repeat. Collect reminds you to gather the same information consistently across targets, producing comparable raw data. Parse reminds you to extract and normalize the fields you care about, turning text into structured evidence. Decide reminds you to use conditionals to handle errors and branch based on outcomes, making the script resilient. Summarize reminds you to produce outputs that support prioritization and reporting, not just piles of logs. Repeat reminds you that idempotence and safe reruns are part of professional recon, enabling confirmation without unintended side effects. This phrase captures the recon automation workflow at the conceptual level the exam expects. If you can run the phrase, you can reason about scripting even if you never write code. In this episode, the key idea is that scripting supports recon by making information gathering repeatable, consistent, and defensible, especially when you need to cover many targets without human error. Loops apply actions reliably across lists. Conditionals handle real-world uncertainty and errors. Parsing turns raw output into structured evidence, and file handling moves data safely through your workflow. Impotence ensures scripts can be rerun without unintended side effects, while awareness of pitfalls like hard-coded secrets, noisy output, and fragile assumptions keeps automation safe. Start small, log actions, validate inputs, and handle failures explicitly. And keep credentials out of scripts to avoid creating new exposure. Use the collect, parse, decide, summarize, repeat phrase to keep your thinking structured. Then describe one recon task you would automate, focusing on what you would collect and how you would summarize it for decision-making. When you can do that, you are thinking like a professional who uses automation to improve accuracy and safety, not just speed. Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.